Well, good afternoon, everybody. Scott Woodwis here at Oulton Park, a rather wet and damp Oulton Park, but I think we'd rather be racing here in the wet than not at all, I think is fair to say. And welcome to those watching, not just on the BRSCC stream, but also on the Catering Cars Facebook and YouTube as well. So, what you're about to witness here is something very, very special, at least for this particular group of drivers. This is the Caterham Academy. Now, one thing we should mention is that every single driver you see in both this group, in the white group, and their respective green group are all complete novice drivers. They are all drivers who have never, ever competed before, and therefore are going to be holding their first ever race start here in the wet at Oulton Park, which is going to be quite daring indeed. Cars already lining up on the grid. They'll be heading off onto their rather wet formation lap heading forwards. But just to explain the Caterham Academy, it's quite simply, it's worked since 1995, and since then they've welcomed over 1,000 ordinary people and turned them into fully fledged racing drivers. And they do it as a collective, so it's not as if any driver is coming to this on their own. They get full support from Caterham all the way through. Everyone takes their ARDS tests together, so everyone goes forwards and takes their racing license test together in groups. Then they move on to doing a test and handling day. So they get to adapt, also their drift day, so they get to adapt to how the car feels, how it works, and how it runs. And we can give you the grid in a second as it comes up. We'll get more into that later. So the first pole position of this year's Caterham Academy in the white group goes to Hugo Bush. He takes pole alongside James Walker, also known as Mr. JWW on YouTube. Then it's Dominic Mansberger and Simon Shaw. Ian Brown and Taylor Flanagan come next from Nick Timpson and Sam Gibbons. Then Ryan Meager and Eike Schick from Germany. Then it's Christopher Broom and Lyndon Sugar rounding out the top 12. Then Ryan Lovett and Stuart Hatzel on row 7 from Jack Woodgate and Alex Vincent. Then it's Adrian Mariadis, one of two brothers in the field, from Michael Hilton. Then Chris Griffith and Mark Firth, Alan Costley and Peter Maloney, Michael Koo and Ben Sengalo, and then Carl Webb and Michael Lewis. Rounding out a 26-car grid for this first of two groups, because there is also the green group, where there is a slightly bigger field for today. So going back to our explanation of the Caterham Academy, after the drivers have gone through their ARDS tests, they've gone through their test and handling day, they will then go on to an official test day to get to grips with the car in a racing environment as the race gets underway. And now up towards turn 1 for the first time. It's going to be quite a daring first couple of corners. Everyone's going to hit the brakes very tentatively and get very gently as they head into the right-hander at Old Hall for the first time. And let's see if we can work out exactly who is in front. So scrum their way through, and it'll either be one of two drivers in the front. Looks like James Walker has dropped down to 4th position, and up into 3rd place has come car number 11, Taylor Flanagan, in the yellow car. So out of Cascades, past Lakeside, which is plenty wet enough on the left-hand side without any more additional water. And now down towards the left-hander at Island Bend, and everyone's taking it nice and tentatively. Everyone's being sensible so far, because it is, of course, their very first ever race start, and they're at first lap at racing conditions. There goes James Walker in the number 7 car. He started on the front row of the grid and looks to be back to around 4th position as they turn into the right-hander at Shellaw's hairpin. A little too deep there from the car. Looks to trying to go around the outside. We'll look at race numbers in a second once they've been able to head across the line. And that is number 25 in there. And that appears to be a very fast starting car. In fact, that's number 25. That's Dominic Mansberger. So he's dropped a couple of spots. Dominic from Germany. A couple of position changing here. Looks like James Walker's getting involved in the mix as well. And a battle there with Dominic as they head over Hilltop and down towards Hislops and Knickerbrook for the first time. And we'll take a look and see where they are on the live timing. Mansberger holding station ahead of James Walker, as we say, known as Mr. JWW, and he's having a look up the inside into Knickerbrook, and Mansberger just holds on around the outside line and keeps the position. So a good initial battle already, but everyone again appears to be driving superbly at the moment. Everyone's keeping it steady, everyone with rain lights on, wipers on, and headlights firmly on, because it's tricky enough in the Caterham Academy when you're competing your very first race. When it comes to doing so in wet conditions like this at a tricky circuit like Oulton Park, it's challenging at the best of times in the dry, but in the wet it's something else. So through the right-hander at Druids and underneath the bridge towards Lodge Corner for the first time, but there is a definitive leader out in front at the moment, and we'll catch numbers in a second once they come past timing for the first time. Little battle there looks like it's going on towards the bottom of the top 10 as we see the other position change here. So across the line to end lap 1, and leader is Bush in the number 22. Then it's Shaw in 2nd place, so Flanagan's up to 3rd. Dominic Mansberger 4th, from Walker and Brown in the top 6. Then Timpson, Gibbons Broom is up to 9th, and then Lovett rounds out the top 10. So they head across the line to complete their first racing lap. It's a 20-minute race for the Caterham Academy. It has been 15 in the past before, but they decided to make it a little bit longer. You can see Mansberger now coming under attack again from front row man James Walker as they head down through Cascades. And the amount of spray coming off the rear tyres, even with these small little Caterhams with a 1.6 litre engine. And they have road and race spec Academy tyres. They have track specs, sort of road spec suspension. It's all road legal cars. So what you can do with these cars is actually drive them on the road to and from, as Walker looks down the outside into Shell Oils. Now it's more grip on the outside line, so he might well be able to make the move stick, and he does go around the outside. Impressive move from James Walker to move up a place. He takes 4th from Dominic Mansberger from Germany. His next target will be the yellow car in front of Taylor O'Flanagan. So there's been a bit of a change there, as we saw on the screen. Looks like there was Taylor O'Flanagan and James Walker were having a great scrap heading down towards the Hislop chicane for the second time. We're seeing the rest of the field heading through, and you can see the different confidence levels there between the drivers in terms of their pace levels. And there's Walker again having another look up the inside, and there's contact. He clips the right rear wing of Taylor O'Flanagan, and Taylor might not totally appreciate that, but he's going to hold on to 3rd place anyway. Bush's lead when he came across the line first time by was 1.5 seconds, so he's been able to extend that a little further. So out of Lodge Corner, across the line to end lap number 2, and we'll check what the lead gap is now for the number 22 of Hugo Bush. Cross the line goes Hugo, and the gap is now up to 1.6 seconds. The fastest lap of the race does go to James Walker. That's the first flying lap at racing speeds. So Walker appears to be the man who, in pre-season testing at Castle Combe, did appear to be the man in form, but it looks to me as if he's certainly living up to that, but not just in the dry conditions, but in the wet as well. And he's having another dive up the inside, this time into Cascades, and with so much confidence on the brakes, James Walker makes it through into the left-hander at Cascades, in now to a podium position. And the next target is going to be for 2nd place, Steve Shaw in the 86. There is Hugo Bush. And now already you can see O'Flanagan trying to come back up the inside at Island Bend. Dominic Mansberger in the black and green car behind number 25 is not too far away. He may have an option, but already you can see how much that James Walker is closing into 2nd place. Steve Shaw really is having to fight pretty hard at the moment. Sorry, Simon Shaw, my apologies. Out of Shell Oils and down towards Britain's. And it's 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th all in those together. The gap was 1.6 seconds across the line at the end of lap number 2. And it's incredible how much confidence some of these drivers do have. Some of these drivers will have previous experience running track days, but there's plenty of experience even driving supercars. Is James Walker. He's going again for 2nd place down the inside of Simon Shaw. Looks for the undercut and the switch back on the exit, and Shaw is so hesitant on the throttle. He's just trying to find the confidence in these conditions. Walker gets a little bit sideways as he tries to put the power on. He's almost on the bottom of the roll cage of Simon Shaw, saying, come on, put your foot down, let's go. But unfortunately, it looks like Simon's just struggling a little bit more as the rain continues to fall even harder, it looks as though, here, looking outside here at Oulton Park. But Hugo Bush has a clear lead in front. He's got the clearest vision of all. Everyone else has a face full of spray on their windscreen, and they're coping the best they can in the conditions. And Taylor O'Flanagan now, his next worry is going to be Dominic Mansberger. Oh, and James Walker's gone around. Walker sideways on the exit Lodge Corner. Off the road goes Taylor O'Flanagan. He's got damage to the right rear wing, but he carries on. And the car that was there in 6th position, that was Timpson in number 4, had to check up to make sure he didn't make contact. So either it was James trying a little too hard, or possibly trying to make a move on the exit to get past Shaw. Either way, James has now got to try and do it all over again. His chances of a podium may possibly have disappeared, but he'll have to try and use superior pace he appears to have to make it work. So Bush leads at the end of lap 3. Bush now has a 1.9 second lead with Shaw in second place. Dominic Mansberger now takes the fastest lap of the race. The German putting in a 2:23.837. He's the only man into the 2:23, so he's certainly got some confidence in these adverse conditions. O'Flanagan's fourth, Walker's down to fifth, and then we've got this battle going on here between, pretty close battle, this is for sixth position, between Timpson, Gibbons, Lovett and Brown. And they head out past Lakeside once again. There is the 11 of Taylor O'Flanagan backing fourth. I think you can just about see the damage on the right rear. You can see one of the brake lights is a little askew on the rear of the car, but he's survived. And that's the key thing in these conditions, particularly in your first race. Just survive the race and make sure you can bring the car home in one piece. There's the recovering James Walker. And there's a move here, I think that looks to be, that possibly was Lovett on Gibbons, I think it was. And there's the 15 of Brown, so it's Lovett getting past Brown, I think, or maintaining his position. And they flick through Britons on lap 4. They're squirming for traction, and now this is a scrap for second because Simon Shaw has got more attention in the form of Dominic Mansberger. Now, Dominic was one of a few drivers who, during the break, was competing in the CaterhamRaces.com online esports series for Caterhams. There was a series for the Academy cars and a series for the top spec, what were called 420R cars, but is now called the 7 UK Championship. And he was somebody who was getting to grips with the virtual version of the Caterham Academy car. As we look back, there's one car off. There was one car off into the barriers. It's number 38, and that is Lovett from 8th position. Now, it looks like he's come a long way. It looks like he's come off just under braking, heading into Hislops. The car has hit one of the distance markers. There's another car off. Is that damage on the... That's just a bit of debris on the inside line I can see on the left of the screen. And Lovett manages to get the car refired. It looks as though he's hit one of the marker boards and possibly glanced off the barriers. But he tends to be trying to get going again. And he will use the escape road to do so. Looking back at the front quickly, is Bush continues to lead the way by 2.4 seconds. As we see here, Lovett just making his way back, tentatively back onto the road as our leaders head down towards Cascade again. And Bush's lead, as we said, is up to 2.4 seconds as we're into the second half of this first Academy race of the season. There's car number 79. That is the number 79 of Ryan Meager. He started back in 9th position, and he is now down to 16th, so he's struggling a bit in these conditions. James Walker has just set the fastest lap of the race, so James Walker puts in a 2:21.894, and that's almost a full second quicker than the fastest lap that was just set by first Dominic Mansberger and then Taylor O'Flanagan. So it looks as though drivers are starting to find a little bit more confidence in these adverse conditions and starting to just drive a little bit quicker and find their limits a bit more easier as well. There is Simon Shaw, and it looks as though they're coming up to some back markers here, one of the slower cars in the field. So Simon Shaw a little bit on his own now. He was under threat from Dominic Mansberger. In fact, the gap was about a tenth. There has been a change. Forgive me, didn't spot that on the cameras, but Dominic Mansberger is into second place now. He's struggling for grip under brakes as he turns in. Now, Bush's pace dropped off last lap. It was a 2:24.226, and Mansberger was a full 1.5 seconds quicker. So he has got time to catch up here. There is 4th place Taylor O'Flanagan. There is James Walker recovering after his spin earlier at Lodge Corner. He's now got himself into the top 5 again, and he's trying to chase after O'Flanagan. He was almost a second quicker than the man in 4th place to try and catch back up again. And I can hear the rain falling even harder on the top of our current commentary position. So I have to say, every single one of these Academy drivers in both groups are absolute heroes for coping with these conditions. It's not easy to run your first race in torrential rain, but credit where credit's due, these guys really are handling it superbly. There is James Walker, holding on to 5th position. Back in 6th there is the number 4. Number 4, Nick Timpson, started 7th on the grid and one car off the road. That is number 15, and that was Brown. He was down in 8th position. That's Ian Brown, started 5th, dropped a few spots and gets back onto the road. We'll see where he's dropped down to when he comes back across the line. So now around about 7.5 minutes to go. The gap is 1.2 seconds and another new fastest lap from Dominic Mansberger. 2 minutes 21.484. He is a full 1.4 seconds faster on that lap. He is absolutely flying in these wet conditions. And I think all that work on the Academy Esports Series seems to have paid off, because he really has got a handle to this Caterham Academy car. Although back in the sim it would have been in dry conditions, but in the wet he's absolutely shining here as Hugo Bush is starting to be caught pretty rapidly here. They exit out of Shell Oils. Little flick of oversteer as Mansberger hits the throttle. But so far, Hugo Bush, who started the race, of course, on pole position, has led every lap so far, is now coming under threat from the German behind in second place. Mansberger driving brilliantly. I did learn that Dominic Mansberger, his father used to race with Kurt Hoffmann in a Porsche team, and Kurt was the father of last year's road sport champion Lars Hoffmann, so a bit of a family connection there. It's good to see not only both family names continuing both in Caterhams. Kurt has had his turn in the academy and in road sport, and now it is Dominic's turn in second place. And the gap is looking a little bit closer. Quick look back to the rest of the positions. Third place is Simon Shaw, fourth is Taylor O'Flanagan, and those two cars just heading through shot now have caught each other. O'Flanagan lapped roughly about 1.3 seconds quicker on that last lap than third place. Then James Walker in fourth, Timpson fifth, and it's Gibbons, Brown, Broome, Vincent and Woodgate. So even though there was a slight excursion off the road at this corner here for the 15 of Ian Brown, he was able to maintain the place and didn't actually lose a position. So impressive stuff to have enough of a gap. But the spread here is a little bit more drawn out than we might have seen in the dry conditions, because everyone here has got different levels of confidence in terms of how much grip they've got, how hard they push, how comfortable they are with how the car feels in these conditions. It's always tricky for these drivers to do so, and they've only got a 1.6 litre engine, but it must feel like so much more power when you've got so much less grip. Particularly these are kind of almost an all-weather tyre for this Avon Academy car. There's James Walker heading across the line in fifth position. The gap is now 1.1 seconds between Hugo Bush and Dominic Mansberger. There are the leading two as they head into Cascades once again. This is on lap 7. They've got roughly 5 minutes to go. And here is a scrap for third between Simon Shaw with the yellow Caterham with the black nose, and then the all-yellow Caterham with the black roll bar. That is Taylor O'Flanagan. He regularly works for the Car Chase Heroes company, where they deal with quite a few different sports cars, such as old Mustangs and Aston Martins and Ferraris and Lamborghinis. But he's got a Caterham under his foot here, and he's going for third place into Island Bend, the two cars side by side. But incredibly, Shaw has got enough confidence to hold on to the outside line on the run towards Shell Oils and maintains the place, shuts the door firmly in Taylor's face and holds on as they come up through the banked right-hander, hug the apex and fire out the other side. And you can see here that O'Flanagan has really got his tail up now. He wants to see if he can pick up a podium place on his very first race. And two different lines into the Britain chicane. And now up over the crest of Hilltop and down towards the chicane. You can see that the two leaders have closed up a little more. And look in the background, because James Walker's also charging along, and he will be benefiting from this battle, because the harder these two fight each other, the easier it's going to be, not only for the leading two to carry on pulling away, but also for James Walker to get himself involved, as Simon Shaw just finding a little bit too much oversteer than he would like. And they are crawling out there in these wet conditions as James Walker continues to apply the pressure up over Clay Hill and under the bridge, under the canopy of the trees. And let's see if O'Flanagan's got anything to try and make a move. There are the top two, nose to tail. I think a move might be imminent here, unless Hugo Bush can keep Germany's Dominic Mansberger at bay. And still, Shaw holds on in front of O'Flanagan. I wonder if he's possibly just biding his time a little bit. And they are side by side on the sprint now, down towards the right-hander at Lodge, and with the inside line and the better run into the corner, it is third place for Taylor O'Flanagan. But is Simon Shaw going to get him back on the exit? He's going to try and put himself alongside. He might get squeezed towards the pit wall, but eventually he has to sit behind O'Flanagan in his spray, with the knowledge that James Walker, if he can see in his mirrors, is closing fast. So here are some more back markers, and up the inside for the lead, side by side with two leaders into Cascades, and Dominic Mansberger takes the lead from Hugo Bush as they turn into the left-hander, and they were just coming up on some back markers. Now how quickly they can dispose of them might be key. Mansberger powers past. So too, by the looks of it, has gone Bush. Now the German has a chance to run with clear air here. 2.5 minutes to go in this first race for the white group of the Caterham Academy Championship for 2020. And this is their first ever competitive event, because it would have originally been at a sprint. Traditionally, the Academy drivers run at a competitive sprint at an event like, or a venue like Aintree or Kerborough. But because of the delay in racing due to the pandemic, it has meant that they've had to amend the calendar slightly, and it's meant that Oulton Park here in these very, very tough conditions has been their first ever race. I'm sure they would have preferred it to be dry, but as we've mentioned, they are really showing a credit to and an example to their fellow drivers in the green group of how to handle these wet conditions safely but also confidently. As Dominic Mansberger comes up to put a lap, whoops, and that's the number 20 going around. That's Griffith in the number 20, back in 23rd position. He decided, having no pass of being lapped, and decided to exit stage right onto the grass. So he's going to try and recover himself. There'll be a yellow flag down there, so if there's any battles for third place backwards, they might have to just back off and hold on for another lap. There's more back markers coming up here. Try and pick out who they are. I imagine that will be the 70 of Hilton and the 88 of Michael Koo. And the 70 was of Michael Hilton. He started 18th. Michael Koo in the 88 started 23rd. And, oh, goodness me, you can see that Dominic Bush was pushing there. Big sideways moment exiting Lodge corner, Druids corner. But into Lodge he turns, and he's getting sideways again. I suspect he's either struggling for grip or he's having fun out there, because he might realise that Dominic Mansberger has got this run. So on to the pit straight. Last lap board goes out. That might be one of the most satisfying things that these drivers will have seen so far. The most satisfying thing, I'm sure, will be the checkered flag. But then some of them might be having so much fun out there in the wet conditions they might not want to stop. Now this will be crucial. There are lots of back markers they're coming up to here. Now I imagine that is probably, and that first one they'll come up against, it's probably around about 20th place, number 34, which is Alan Costley, started 21st. Dominic Mansberger carves his way past the slower cars in the field. The blue flags waving furiously to ensure that they do indeed move out of the way. There was third place. That was Taylor O'Flanagan, who is quite comfortably pulled away from Simon Shaw. The gap, looking at it last time across the line, was 3.7 seconds between third and fourth. And in the back markers now, you can just see that Hugo Bush has started to close in a little more. He's not as far away as he was when they crossed the line. It was 2 seconds, but that's not 2 seconds to me. So I think either Hugo's having more confidence in the getting past the back markers, or it's Dominic getting a bad deal trying to get through them. And this is not where he wants to be caught. He's got 3 slower cars in front of him, trying to pull his way around them, pick his way through in these adverse conditions. This is so nervy for somebody who's only in their first ever race. But they come over the crest of Hilltop towards Hislops for the final time. And this race victory might not be settled just yet, and that's not going to help Mansberger either. That's the 74 of Lewis, who's in the way as a back marker. He's going to have to try and move as if he possibly can, and Mansberger dives up the inside, but Lewis won't open the door and let him through. The blue flags are waving furiously, and this may possibly give an opportunity for Hugo Bush to get through. Then nose to tail for first and second. Bush looks to the outside line. Mansberger moves across. He might not see him. It's almost 3 abreast. Goodness me, over Clay Hill, under the bridge. Is it going to be Mansberger or will it be Bush as they come up towards the right-hander at Druids? And it is still Mansberger in front, but Bush is right underneath him, underneath the roll cage of the number 25 as they turn through the right-hander, exiting Druids and on towards Lodge for the final time and up towards the final corner. It has been an exceptional race for these drivers in their first ever race, so well done to each and every one of them that will make the checkered flag. But Dominic Mansberger is about to make history in his racing career, because he is about to win on his debut in his very first race. Dominic Mansberger heads to the checkered flag and wins the first race of the season in the Caterham Academy White Group for 2020. A brilliant wet weather performance to climb up through the order and pick up the victory. Hugo Bush, who started on pole, finishes in second place. Taylor O'Flanagan gets third. Fourth place for Simon Shaw, but only by 0.3 of a second from James Walker. So Mr. JWW with a top 5 on his debut in the wet. What a drive. Next up across the line is set to be the rest of our top 10. There's quite a big gap back to them. We're just waiting now for car number 4, which is Nick Timpson. Across the line comes Nick, and he picks up 6th position. Brown will pick up 7th, ahead of Gibbons in 8th, and it's Broom and Vincent rounding out the top 10. And you have to admire the wet weather skill of these novice drivers to be able to handle their cars like that. There were 1 or 2 spins, 1 or 2 incidents, but they all seem to have managed to get through to the flag pretty well. I think one car that didn't make it was the 38 of Lovett after his spin down at the entrance to the Hislop chicane, but the rest of the field making their way through. And be sure to give them plenty of support if you're watching on my live stream, because that was a tough one for your first race. I think if you wanted to do your first race at Oulton Park in the pouring rain in the Caterham Academy car, must be quite tricky. So we're going to take a look at some of the highlights from our first Academy White Group race season. Hugo Bush with a fantastic start in a racing environment as the race gets underway. Everyone appeared to get away cleanly. And now up towards turn 1 to Nickerbrook and Mansberger. The early battles here, so Dominic Mansberger around the outside line, scrapping with James Walker. Big sideways moment in these very tricky conditions. Walker was also having great battles here with the 2 yellow cars of Simon Shaw and Taylor O'Flanagan. So there's been a bit of a change there, as you saw on the screen. Looks like there was drivers in terms of their pace levels. And there's Walker again having another look up the inside, and there's contact. Walker and O'Flanagan heading into Druids. And now already you can see O'Flanagan trying to come back up the inside at Island Bend. Dominic Mansberger just Shaw looks for the undercut and the switch back on the exit. And Shaw is so hesitant on the throttle. He's just trying to here looking outside here at Oulton Park, but Hugo Bush has a clear lead in front. He's got the clearest vision of all. We're always going to be carrying back with spray on their windscreen. And they're coping the best they can with the conditions in the race. James O'Flanagan now, his next worry is going to be Dominic Mansberger. Oh, and James Walker's gone around. It was narrowly avoided by 3, so he's certainly got some confidence in the grass in these adverse conditions. More battles further down the order. Walker's down to 7th and 8th and 9th positions. Was getting to grips with the virtual version of the Caterham Academy car. If you look back, there's one car off. Problems for the 38. There's one car off into the barriers. It's number 38. The grass at Hislops. He managed to recover, trouble-free, headed back to the pits. That's where he used to stay for the rest of the race. To do so. 79. That is the number 79 of Ryan Meager. The wet weather conditions superbly. James Walker was still struggling along, back in 6th there drive into an eventual top number 4. There was a spin later for Nick Timpson, started 7th on the grid and 1 car off the road. Positions in Brown, he was able to maintain the place and didn't actually lose a position. There was an early scrap, late impressive stuff to have later on. Between foot here, and he's going for 3rd place into Island Bend, the 2 cars side by side, but incredible handle these wet conditions. But then, late in the race, this was where it became a key part of the key battle at the front. Hugo Bush with a lap, whoops, and that's the number 20 going around. That's Griffith in the number 20. Dives up the inside, but Lewis won't open the door and let him through. The blue flags are waving furiously. And this makes the second. Bush looks to the outside line. Mansberger moves across. You might not see him. He's almost 3 abreast. Goodness me, over towards the right-hander at Druids. And it is still Mansberger in front, but Bush is right on his debut in his very first race. Dominic Mansberger heads to the checkered flag and wins the first victory in the white group for Caterham Academy, and he will get the maximum score of points on the board. So there's the top 8 as you see it. Dominic Mansberger wins the first white group race ahead of Hugo Bush and Taylor O'Flanagan in 3rd place. That's your first white group podium of 2020. Simon Shaw 4th, James Walker 5th, Nick Timpson 6th, Ian Brown 7th, and Sam Gibbons in 8th. These drivers will head now to Cadwell Park in a couple of weeks' time. Not the green group. They've got their race coming up later on after lunch. So stay tuned for more action here at Oulton Park. But Andy McKeon will talk you through the first race of the TCR UK Dunlop Touring Car Trophy and VW Cup very soon.